Hi, Lady Danny here, and the other day I was discussing how in my travels of foraging I've seen a lot of white flowers recently, and it's important to be able to identify each one correctly. So previously I discussed Ageratina altissima, or white snake root, but today we're discussing late boneset, Eupatorium serratinum. Now, late boneset also can hybridize with Eupatorium perfoliatum, which is known as common boneset. And neither are edible, but they both have similar medicinal qualities. Now, if you just took a quick glance at this, you might think, hey, that does look like snake root. When you look at them side by side, you can see here that snake root has a much more compacted head with many more floral clusters together. When you look here at boneset, you can see the floral head is sparsely populated, and it does have those stamens that sit a bit above the floral head to give it a much more shaggy look. Snake root also has heart-shaped leaves, whereas boneset has much more long lanceolate leaves. When it comes to common boneset, or Eupatorium perfoliatum, you can see the way that the leaves are situated around the stem. It looks like the stem is actually perforating the leaves, hence the name perfoliatum. However, with Eupatorium serratinum, that does not happen. The leaves are on tiny petioles and they sit a little bit away from the stem. Now, while this plant is not edible, it is really beneficial, especially during cold and flu season. This plant's been used as a fever reducer for arthritis and rheumatism, for pain in the muscles, for malaria, for flu, for colds, to help stop coughing. In fact, one of the common names is thoroughwort. It's also been used widely for strains and sprains. Now, don't let the name fool you. It's not called boneset because it helps to heal your bones. It's called boneset because this was considered the remedy for bone break fever. That's a mosquito-borne illness that's better known as dengue fever. And right now, when it's in bloom, is the perfect time to collect this plant and to dry it. This plant is a U.S. native, and back in 1918, when the Spanish flu epidemic happened, it was this plant that was responsible for saving so many lives. Before you use this plant, you must dry it. It contains a constituent tremorol that is toxic, but it dissipates when it's thoroughly dried. It was said during the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918 that you couldn't go to a farmhouse that didn't have boneset tied in a bunch hanging upside down in the barn, waiting to dry and be used when needed. If you were suffering from symptoms of a cold or flu, you would drink this as a tea. The trick is you would drink 1 cup of tea and get as much of it down you as you could without feeling that you were going to throw up. And once you got to that point, that was enough, and then you went to bed and you would sweat out the toxins and begin to feel better. So using this plant, moderation is key, but because of the aforementioned emetic properties of the plant, you're not going to be able to overdrink this plant, but it's a good idea just to keep an eye on how much you're taking, because the plant does contain pyrrolizidine alkaloids, which could cause some problems if you took an incredible amount of it. Although some care is required when using this plant, if you're trying to overcome the cold and flu or deal with the muscle aches and pains that can often come with winter, perhaps boneset is just your cup of tea.